Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. May 3rd, 2021, here from Santa Monica, California, Alan Clements. I'm resuming my series of talks based upon my newly published book, Extinction X-Rated. It's an autofictional, uber, super comedic, dark satire on good and evil in the fabric of this samsara that we find ourselves in. Today's sharing, in my normal style of spontaneity, the choice is ours, taking the power back, and equal to that, an intersecting flow through this sharing, is making our lives a meditation. Making our lives a meditation, imbuing the grace of being with the curse of encounter and the challenge of crises and the incredible moments of poignant beauty to intersect and engage, elevate, transform this shared fabric of all of our lives and time with the best of us. That's the meditative lens. And imbuing or empowering this concept of choice, which is inherent in the word mindfulness, with effort and focus, a deliberate, reasoned, often spontaneous, intelligent choice-making through the filter of seeing an event, an experience, an emotion with eyes wide open, as much as wide open as possible. And I'm thinking here in my own life of seeing how the importance of seizing, if you will, aligning in greater fidelity, if you will, with my intuitive truth, the truest sense of truth feeling made real through one's own heart. Call that the heart and the ventricles, the arteries, the aorta, if you will, of conscience and mindfulness and integrity, and what I've referred to over the past as existential dignity. What does it mean to be a human being, to make conscious choices and to elevate our lives as an experience of a meditative engagement, the conscious, mindful, choice-making encounter with phenomena through the senses. And right there at that confluence of inner and outer, the choice-making, life filter of meditation, what in fact elevates your truest heart's desire, okay? That's what I mean by the choice is ours. And that's the splendid curse of existence, isn't it? That there's this incessant crossroad to face and encounter and determine and choose. No wonder people live in some form of predictable, unpredictable habit, and why addiction becomes a priority over the fidelity of intimate, truly intimate choice kissing of space and time with self and other. I place my hands upon your holy heart and body, my goddess of death, and there I will caress from you the fear in my own mind of falling in love with freedom, rather than being allured by your desire to remind me of my own mortality. I'm not saying that immortality is my preference, but I'm saying I want to take myself out of conditions, point two. Ever more so, this Buddhist Pali concept, and I use it only through the filter of Buddhism. I'm sure it's just nuministic through eternity, nibbana, On the one hand, it refers to the extinction of greed, anger, and delusion, the primordial sources of suffering inherent in the fabric of consciousness and time. And equally, it speaks to the engagement of phenomena, physical sensations, one's heartbeat, sound, taste, smells, sensations, memory, feelings, feeling and seeing them through the unfiltered, unconditional presence of just being with it with pure contact. I see you, I kiss you, I release you into the radiance of this evanescent totality called existence. I do not wish to hold you through my fear and grasping and attachment. That's the meditative filter for me. Seeing and discerning that fine edge of interaction between self and self, self and subselves, self and subconsciousness, self and other subconsciousness, denial being met with intimacy and awareness, all the crevasses and valleys and mountain peaks and infinite galaxies that we share with human life together in this ambient, weird, terrifying field called samsara, the meditative nibbana filter. Very rare to find someone who uses that word. I want to be in unconditional space with you. In breath, out breath, neither wish to live nor fear death. Unconditional presence, intimacy made real on that fine, 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 beautiful space of allowing without keeping, touching without grasping. And here I go into the future with you, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, thought by thought, heartbeat by heartbeat. And I find myself kind of coming back into, I know all these things sound so cliched, but it's irrelevant, a self-simplicity, a self-intimacy. It's been a couple of years now, especially the last year and a half, and throughout my months in Bali, taking my shoes off, listening to myself and nature, communing with nature. It's such a beautiful environment to commune there. I was lucky to be there in that time. And really the simplicity of day-to-day, hour-to-hour choice making, creating aesthetics. And right now, in the life circumstance that I'm faced with, and perhaps you as well, we're all in this heightened recognition of time, of lockdown, of a pandemic, of life and death, and infections and injections and global totalitarianism, and who to trust and who to believe, and where do we find the fidelity of an integrity that we can rely on. And we come right back, and what I'm pointing, we come right back to making my life a meditation, which is really, for me, a deeper regard for honesty, self-simplicity and self-honesty. What do I feel? What is my truest truth? And strengthening that. I mean, if I were to give a gift and hear my daughter speak the poem of her own soul, Dad, I am learning the fine art of trusting, thinking, feeling, intuiting my truest truth, Dad. There's something rad about that. That's making life a meditation. It's not just in-breath and being aware of the sensations, or the nibbana at the end of the road through insight and wisdom. An unconditional, intimate engagement of choice-making through the finest relationship to one's truest truth. Choice-making, taking the power back from the expectations of others not being met, the expectations of life on the terms of my hope and conditioning. Release, 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 kiss. Release, 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 feel. release, 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 live. And there's something so, so elegant about that simplicity today. Second half of today's sharing. The application of what I'm sharing in my own life. I've been living alone now here in Los Angeles for up to a year. Consciously. A chosen monkdom, monastic aesthetic. My own humble, unique way. Deep, deep simplicity within the context of something that's been gifted to me, a bit of an affluent monastery, a neighborhood of affluence. And I'm blessed by having high four walls and a security system, should there be that which arises based upon robberies or theft or abductions. You hear the helicopters all the time throughout the cities, night and day, sirens. And I walk every day, a couple of miles up and down the street, back and forth. I've gotten to know some of the neighbors by simply form and smiles. And I notice the way in which I notice the way in which people I have seen now for up to a year walk, and I notice how many people have dogs on leashes and carrying bags to pick up their poo. And I notice so often how these people, how many of them walk here in this neighborhood where there's actually some grass, and people convene here on these streets as dog walking, poo picking parks. And it's bizarre to me on a certain level to see the preoccupation of how so many people walk on their own leashes to animals while they themselves are leashed to the dog and to the cats. How often I have seen people on bikes with a phone in their hand and the leash is on one of the bars of the bike, and the dog is running and they're on the phone, and some even have headphones on. And it's just this multiplicity of intersecting, I guess, conscious choice habits. I don't want to judge it, but it seems so foreign to me to see how the dogs rear up when they see another dog and they want to go fun with the dog, and the owner just yanks them back. And the dog is being choked back and becomes more and more obedient to the leash. And I read into that obedience a domesticity forced upon the beloved animal. And I imagine how these dogs go back to their so-called owners' homes and do what good dogs do. Wag their tails and love their masters for the food that comes out at morning and noon and evening or whenever they get fed, and they go back to lying and waiting for that 1 or 2 times a day where they go back out on the leash and they poo with their masters on their phones, and they rear up at their sight of other dogs, and very rare do you ever see them become unleashed. It's against the law. Choice making, making life your meditation. In breath, out breath. And there's something so contracting when I see these basic human behaviors. And I read into them as if I'm a scriptwriter to do my next dark, satirical, gallows humor-based conditioning on the robotic nature of affluence and society and urbanization. And all of a sudden I go into this hyper psychedelic state of, oh my God, in these massive mansions with tons of people always intersecting in the streets and, cutting down trees and limbs and endlessly blowing leaves, bzz, 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 blowing leaves, more blowing them all over the place. And it's like you can't even go outside. And they have earphones on, but I don't. And then the lawns are being cut, and you wonder who lives into these places. And they come out occasionally in their plastic Lululemon, no doubt about it. I've got some too. Jumpsuits and bags and slim and trim. And then there's the people that invade the yard, sometimes 5 and 10 of them at a time, and just cut, trim, water, blow, cut, trim, water, blow. And it's like, God, and I hear all the electrification and the nuclear plants and the oil refineries and the water coming from Colorado, and just this big influence of like human life on this precious planet. And I keep thinking of why I wrote this book, Extinction X-rated, and I've been alone in this elegant monastic setting trying to find my heartbeat and a more conscious choice making in this pandemic, to rise up in a greater radiance of making my life a more meditative event. But there's something in it that's so surreal, it's so kind of Twilight Zone-like. It's somewhere in between a dark comedy and, God, this is a frightening reality. And you go, oh my God, Alan, oh my God, where to go in this planet to find your peace? I understand why people flood to Bali, flood to Byron Bay, flood to Hawaii, flood to the forests of the earth, flood to Bear Lake, flood to Santa Fe and Sedona, flood to the places where the urbanization is just receding and the consciousness of people wants to find their group, their tribe, their sangha, their temple. The cry of the heart to be met and to commune in this strange ambience. So I'm saying all of this, it's like, why endure when you can choose, right? I don't know where you sit today in your own lives and how much you do what you do out of conditioning and habit and the unconscious, unmindful relationship to the food, to comfort, to choices, the familiar. And of course, it's challenging right now to give life to our wonderment, our adventure. And let me pause right here, almost coming to the end. The last third, I'm very clear that when I leave here, which is soon, and I pray I can get into Canada to see my beloved friends and my daughter, but I'm going to go very likely to at least a month or more on Maui, where I want to create on that special place I've spent 4.5 decades in and out as a kind of first and second tier home. I know the land, I know lots of people, but I want to commune in a sacred retreat. And so this is my way of saying to all of you out there, if you have interest, I think July 15th, 18th, 20th, for the next month or 6 weeks, it will happen. I can feel it should my heart keep beating in the way that I know it will. Pray that it will. Come join me in this sacred kind of Rumi-esque garden of a co-creative place to splendor in conscious choice making and make together our lives a heightened on this level of time in this world as we are today on the precipice of a 6th mass extinction, an elegant, sonic, existential, dhammic, nibbanic, co-creative awakening. I'm calling out for the savants to come dance in that sapiosexual, ubuntufied, erotified, beautiful, tantrified field of love-making awakening with nibbana at the soul radiating out through it. Do you hear it? Come join that space. I hope I'm there. And when I think about my own conscious choice making, the word simplicity comes in. I know it's a luxury to think of that, but that is a conscious choice right now, that I want to luxuriate in simplicity. I want to decathex from urbanization, from electrification, from technology, from likes and swipes and views and comments and texts. From my heart to yours, thank you for the outpouring of love, the last 2 days especially. I don't even have the ability to communicate. I wish you could hear how I feel about what you've written, and know that although I haven't been able to text and respond to so many people's beautiful outpouring, my heart is there. Just know, feel it. Feel that you're loved and respected. I wish I could just tell you the poetry that I feel from my heart to yours when I read what you've written. Know that it's there, and I'll do my best to actually communicate that. But if I don't, just know that it's there. It's a fragile time, but the empowerment is there of conscious choice making, making my life a meditative event. I think of simplicity. I'll close with a short story that I've said so many times, but never felt in the intimacy that I feel it right now. You know, many of you know of my intimate long-term connection to Myanmar and Burma. What a sacred land. What we see in the news and hear, it is so foreign to the people, yet so familiar. It's a band of just a few men and their wives and their kids, just a few, that got the sad gene of the psychopath. And they got together and communed with their own unrecognized demonic DNA and acquired guns and weapons from Mr. Putin in Russia and the genocidal psychopath in China. I'm going to speak more and more about that. The genocidal psychopath Xi Jinping in China has a one-world design called totalitarianism and the subjugation of freedom into perpetual slavery with depopulation as mandate. It is there. No conspiratorial theory at all. But Burma is a sacred land. The people are many, tyrannized by this satanic evil man, Ming Online, driven by primordial forces beyond his own control. He is the quintessential modern Devadatta, using the Buddhist text as reference, as an analogy. But what a sacred land. Those of you who've ever been there, you know. Those of you who live there, you know. These people are so breathtaking. And I think it's in all of us. But it really comes to life to me when I think about what is going on in this splendid land. I just so wish the people of the world could see and feel the radiance of goodness that just permeates through the society there. The love of dana and generosity. They don't live by words alone. They live by generosity. They give loot first, not words of compassion. All over the city streets and villages right now, people who are so utterly impoverished by economic standards are so wealthy by the concept of dana. You can't take my dana from me, my love of generosity. I give because I love to give. And even when they can be shot or assassinated from a distance, they still risk giving to strangers. I think sometimes on these streets here in Los Angeles and Venice and Santa Monica and Bel Air and Beverly Hills and the Palisades and Malibu, Imagine if all of this loot they did of Burma. I can imagine an epoch from now in the sediment belt of Los Angeles, New York, Houston, Austin, San Francisco, Paris, Berlin is just calcified with not fossil fuels, but just money. Radiated money. Radiated crypto, radiated fiat, radiated symbols of greed. I mean, it's so easy to jump time and the choice is ours. Take the power back. Can you change society? My activism today is really the activism of my own soul to me. Show by example. Maybe it was Gandhi that said, my life is my message. Boy, do I ever get that at this point. Walk the walk, Alan. That's all that matters. Walk the walk and don't even imagine someone else needs to see you walk. Be that unconditional, that nibbanic in your pure beingness. Something so magnificent about that. And I remember back with my friend Ukundala, one of my best friends before he died in Burma. He took me to visit his mom and dad in an old age home. There's something so sacred about the home for the diseased and the elderly and the single. Sacred environments in Burma. Temples of purity. Just citadels of resilience and metta, loving kindness and compassion. Once this evil regime is vanquished in Burma, may I invite you, go to Burma, give back to the people everything imaginable. Take so much money and love and goodness and just shower the people in support. Go to the homes, the old homes, the orphanages, the prisons. Release the bars. Give, 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 give. Ukundala took me to see his mom and dad. And I was a monk at the time. And we walked into this old age home on the outskirts of Rangoon. And he pointed up ahead where there were 3 elderly women sitting on a bench underneath a orange bougainvillea tree. And he said, the woman in the middle is my mom. I'm gonna go do some errands and then I'll come back and meet you there. My mom speaks English. And so he left and I walked up to the 3 women and I, in my fledgling Burmese, I spoke to them and they all giggled. They must have been in their late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s. I couldn't tell exactly. But I have a real fondness for, I don't even like to use the word elderly, but elderly women. I was in love with my grandmother as a young boy and as a teenager and as a young adult. She passed away, I think, at 100. And there they were sitting, just in their simplicity, just sitting in their choice-making, meditative simplicity, with large smiles. And Ukundala's mother looks up at me and says that, Ukundala, my son, has told me that you are a monk at the Mahasi Tatanayekta here in Rangoon. And she says in this kind of unexpected satirical quip, I hear that you're just a young man, like 29. Why aren't you in America as a layman, married and with children, enjoying your life?" She kind of giggled like that. And the other women next to her kind of laughed as well in a humble kind of way. And I felt like, my goodness, I felt really kind of disrespected. I was a monk after all, in this country out of choice. Why would I be in America married with children and slaving away in my job when I am now a noble bhikkhu watching in-breath and out-breath, meditating under the great Mahasi Sayadaw? How could you say that? Are you blind or something? I'm thinking to myself. And then she looks up and said, "Are you really happy as a monk?" I went, "Oh my God, she's adding insult to injury here." It's like, my God, am I really happy? And you know how Buddhists are in the world, we're almost always happy, but never really. It's always somewhere in the future. If you practice well enough, or if you're Buddhistically correct enough or spiritually correct enough, and you really kind of watch your breath enough, and you really sit long enough, and you really listen to your teacher well enough, you'll eventually develop insight and wisdom, and you'll eventually be beyond happy. And again, I felt slightly insulted, and I looked at her really frankly in the eyes, and I said, "Well, I'm almost happy. What about you? Are you happy?" With a slight tone of judgment. Why did you ask me something like that? Not a very elegant rapport. And as I said that and asked her that question, she looked at me right in the eyes, and I could see, and I can see it right now, that she, which U Kundalini didn't tell me, she was blind. She was physically blind. You could see, eyes wide open, without any kind of sight in the way in which we know it for those who are not blind. And I felt immediately how arrogant that was to ask that question. Right there. And my mindfulness, my integrity, my conscience intercepted the dialogue, the narrative, making meditation the vocation of our lives. And I relaxed, and she looked at me through her eyes and just lit up with a smile that really rendered me, I would say, rendered me into an innocent humility, in which I reflected very quickly on the terror that I have of losing my eyes. I don't know about you, but the idea of not being able to see is a frightening belief at a very core level. My mom, who was confined to a wheelchair, the idea of not being able to walk is a little bit of a frightening anticipation. The idea of being frail on a bed and not having control of my bowels and urination or capacity to feed myself is a bit of a terror. The idea of not being able to hear the cello, the keyboards, sing along with a song in co-harmony with a chosen album is a bit of a fear. The idea of not just having physical touch, the simplicity of that choice-making activity that's so natural, making my life a meditation, an honoring of the sacred fidelity of beingness, the sacredness of just having senses, much less being mindful of the sense phenomena at the sense doors. A deep, deep, intrinsic, sacred gratitude, which is sort of the soul of simplicity and choice making. It's not so much choice, choice, choice like driving. It's relaxing, Alan, back more into the sacred simplicity of pure honor of the phenomena of being. In-breath, out-breath, neither wish to live nor wish to die isn't just reflecting on mortality and death. It's the innate sacred emotionality of pure being. My father lost several fingers. Terrifying anguish. I can't imagine losing your hands. There is a man who walks with his dog with one leg. There's a couple of others who walk dogs who are in wheelchairs. There are lots of children in carriages being pushed by nannies or relatives or parents who are also carrying a dog and often on a phone. And I'm thinking of the life and the mind of this infant, this child, growing up till eventually they have the right to have an unrestricted smartphone and a computer and a dating app and a dog and a leash and a home and a family and electrification and consumerism and a planet in collapse. And I'm wondering, will they encounter the Dhamma? Will they encounter the Buddha? Will they encounter the Four Noble Truths? Will they encounter the elegance of mindful choice-making and simplicity and wisdom? What will their lives be like? And so I'm reflecting here on inviting myself, especially in the context of where I sit today, to not see choice-making as a futuristic event, navigating the highway towards a destination, but more of sitting back and honoring the senses. I can't imagine what it would be like, or if it's even possible, to fall in love without seeing the woman, hearing the sounds of other, smelling that of other, having hands that touch other. And here I'm looking at Ukundala's mother, right in her blind eyes, and I've asked her, "Are you happy?" Well, she answers to me, "Yes, I am very happy." I am very content. And she, in her uncontrived poetry, said, she kind of put both of her hands up. I have everything I need. I'll never forget that. I have everything I need. I see so much of the world as never enough time, never enough love, never enough aesthetics on my terms, never enough travel, never enough money, never enough. That momentum, right, into the future of never enough. Never enough, until the great silence engulfs the entire earth. Never enough, as Mother Sun wraps our splendid planet in the flames 200 million miles from her womb. Never enough, earthlings. In the great silence, in this nuministic field of infinity, there is no earth anymore, never enough, a never enough culture. It's so wildly existential how we can feel into the simplicity of an event and expand that to an earth, to other, to a galaxy, to a universe, making our lives a meditative event. What does it mean to consciously, mindfully make choices? Make our lives a meditative experience. Sit back. Take the future out of hope. That's where I'm at today. It's a great risk to cliches as it is to call off the future. But I am calling that off. I'm calling it off. None of us know. She said, I have everything I need. There's something so rad about that. As a mantra, a heartbeat, I have everything I need. Create from that place. Pick up a pen from that place. Pick up a brush from that place. Send a text from that place. Nibbanified the space. That's what I heard. I have everything I need. I'm in unconditional self-respect with what I have. I have a home. I can't see it, but I feel it. And I know it. I have shelter. I have a bed. She even went to say that I have a blanket that I use when it's cold. I have a well, although it is quite chilly in the winter months, but it invigorates my body and my mind. I have everything I need. I have food, she said, I have medicine. I love the naturalness of the Burmese medicine. It keeps me as vital as possible. And then she said, she put her hands on her two sisters, I have friendship. I'm blessed. Not that I've seen it only in the last few weeks, especially these last 2 days, but I'm blessed, and I think all of us can relax right here and consecrate our intimacies, our friendships, who see us and feel us and love us and give to us and donify us. Donify, nibbonify, give through heart, through support, unconditional. I don't want to ask you what you need. I want to simply give out of the love of supporting you. Sister, brother, lover, father, son, daughter. My friendships, I have everything I need. And then she said, although I can't see, my friends often tell me of things that touch them, that they see. If only you could see the way I see a sunset, the way that my sister tells me. Imagine telling your best friend, your lover, hey, keep your eyes open but close them. Let me talk to you about the poetry of the hummingbird. Let me talk to you about the poetry of the aesthetics of my own insight today. Let me take the condition out of the Sampapalapawasa story, of the circular story that never ends. Let me take the propaganda out of Lokia, good and bad, right and wrong, and politics, who's right, and Biden and Trump and MAGA and Extinction. Let me just talk to you about the simplicity of intimacy. If you could only hear how I understand the color of red. That's pretty cool. If only you could understand how I hear rather than see the color of love. I can't see you. But can't is overcome through I can, a choice making through the perceived limitation of cultural conditioning that blindness is a hardship, mortality is a hardship, one breath at a time, that disease is a hardship, illness is a hardship, death is a hardship. Stop the propaganda of cultural incarceration, Alan. Deprogram these narratives. That's where I'm at right now. Deprogram them. Done. Into the fidelity of a poetic, of simplicity. I could go on and on, but I'll close. Ukundala came up to us from behind, and I turned around and I saw him with an elderly man. And the blind mother, Ukundala's mother, sensed that her son was there, and they said something in Burmese, and the elderly man sat next to Ukundala's mother, and she looked up to me in those blind eyes and said, "You ask if I am happy." And I said, "I have everything I need. And how lucky I am that I have such unconditional love." And she introduced me to her husband. And they both looked at me with that kind of mystical, deep, heartfelt metta, and no doubt some compassion for my own predicament, and smiled in honor to have met you. And I leave that today from my heart to yours as a gift from Burma, from my own memory well. And I invite you to invite me and to invite our Sangha and our friends and family and community to do as much as humanly possible to relax that momentum of whatever we feel as a victim, or that it's not enough, the fear and or the greed. I don't take anything away from entrepreneurship. It's just not where I'm hanging right now. And okay, others who do that. But in my own tribe, Sangha, digital and human, I'm calling forth for the elevation of an elegant aesthetic where our wealth is placed and enhanced through heart-centric intimacies and simplicities and poetries and dancing together in this co-creative nibbana field of unconditional poetry. I love you freely without the need to propagate even continuity. I love you freely, the gift of that grace. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your unthinkably splendid expressions of caring and goodness, texts. And if you wish to commune with me and a few sisters and brothers in a type of trans retreat environment, many of you have already written, may you continue to message directly or through messenger or email, let me know. And I will just simply put those interests into a sacred file, and it's coming should the breathing continue and the body continue. And may your life continue so that we meet in time beyond this digital separation and can co-create our own trans old age home and bring alive, which today is the most intimate I've ever felt it, the Nibbana metaphor, the release of conditions for tomorrow, for time, for fear, for shame, for greed, and to smile into the radiance of this unconditional, this happiness, this joy that's always present if we make our lives a meditative event. So from my heart to yours, choose wisely, take the power back. Hope to see you tomorrow.